After returning from Normandy, the company spent a brief period resting and refitting before resuming intensive training in preparation for Operation Market Garden, the campaign to liberate Holland. According to Mauser, they had only a few days to get ready before the 17th of September jump. For this operation, he carried his reserve parachute, but packed less equipment than he had for D-Day. Around midday, Mauser and the rest of the division jumped from their aircraft. He remembered it as a beautiful day. Everything felt unusually quiet except for the sound of his parachute opening. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Looking down, he realized he was descending toward a freshly plowed field. After what he considered the best landing of his military career, he joined up with his company and advanced toward their objective near Eindhoven. As they moved through the area, civilians came out of their homes offering food, beer, and wine. There were many embraces and celebrations. Mauser's time in Eindhoven passed without major incidents. After the failure to secure the critical bridge at Arnhem, Easy Company was moved northwest to an area between two rivers known as the Island. On the 22nd of October, Easy Company received orders to rescue approximately 100 British paratroopers and airmen trapped across the Rhine near Arnhem. Under cover of darkness, the men crossed the river in small British boats, carrying roughly 6 soldiers each. The rescue operation, known as Operation Pegasus, was led by Captain Fred Moose Heiliger, Easy Company's commanding officer. "We crossed over and set up our .30 caliber machine gun for security," Mauser recalled. Assigned to protect the flank, he never actually saw the British troops they were rescuing. It was simply too dark. The mission lasted only a few hours and concluded before sunrise, which proved fortunate because German aircraft bombed the boats on the south bank the following day. For his participation in Operation Pegasus, Mauser received the Bronze Star. The division later moved to Mourmelon, France, for rest and refitting. During that time, Mauser received a 4-day leave pass to Paris. "I didn't have any money, but I had candy bars and cigarettes, and they were worth more than cash." While there, he rode the subway for the first time and visited a nightclub. Shortly after returning to Mourmelon, the division was ordered to prepare for movement once again. German forces had broken through the First Army's lines in the Ardennes. The 101st Airborne was loaded onto trucks and rushed north to Bastogne in what soldiers called a tailgate jump. They traveled through the night and arrived to find American troops retreating. "You're never going to stop them," one soldier told Mauser. Some departing troops handed over ammunition, while others kept theirs. Sporadic shellfire could already be heard. On December 18, 1944, Easy Company took up positions in frozen foxholes within the Bois Jacques. "We got surrounded on my birthday," Mauser remembered. "Quite a present." Although he could see German tanks, he believed the woods would prevent them from advancing effectively. Conditions in the foxholes were miserable, with intense cold making life difficult. The only way to stay warm was by rubbing hands together. Some soldiers wrapped gunny sacks around their feet for insulation, but Mauser was unable to find any. Artillery fire was nearly constant. As he explained, some men refused to leave their foxholes even to relieve themselves. When they later jumped back into their positions, they sometimes forgot what they had done, leading to loud expressions of disgust. Persistent fog covered the battlefield, and the only aircraft heard at night were German buzz bombs. Once the fog lifted, Allied planes began delivering supplies to the trapped paratroopers. Mauser and several comrades retrieved one supply container that landed between the opposing lines. The drops provided desperately needed equipment, especially food. On the 22nd of December, a German officer approached under a flag of truce carrying a surrender demand for Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, who was serving as acting division commander. When McAuliffe's famous response, "Nuts," spread through the ranks, Mauser joined in the cheering. Nevertheless, there were moments when he feared the Germans might overwhelm Bastogne. "They had more equipment than we did, but they probably believed we had more than we actually possessed." The soldiers knew General Patton was advancing toward them, but no one knew exactly when he would arrive. Even after Patton's 4th Armored Division broke through to Bastogne on the 26th of December, the fighting continued. German artillery killed several of Mauser's friends, including Warren Skip Muck and Alex Pincala. "Muck was a friendly kid," Mauser recalled. "My foxhole wasn't far from his." On one occasion, while stepping out of his foxhole, a German reconnaissance plane flew low overhead. "If I'd had my rifle, I could have shot him down," he claimed. Instead, he noticed the pilot smiling and waving. "So I smiled and waved back." One night, Mauser joined a patrol into Foy, a town they would soon be ordered to capture. After crossing more than 500 yards of open terrain, the patrol moved through the town without encountering any Germans. Deciding not to push their luck, they returned toward their own lines. As they neared the woods, they came under fire from Fox Company, positioned to Easy Company's left. Bullets whizzed overhead. "Stop shooting, we're Americans!" Mauser shouted, and the firing immediately stopped. On January 13, 1945, the battalion launched its assault on Foy. During Easy Company's advance into the town, Mauser fired several rifle clips at German positions. "I don't know whether I hit anyone." After the town was secured, he took cover in a shell crater. An enemy round exploded nearby, showering his face with dirt and debris. He reported to an aid station, where a medic cleaned his wounds. The medic told him the injury qualified for a Purple Heart, but he never received the medal. 2 days later, he was wounded again while sitting in a barn with his helmet removed. A mortar round landed inside and exploded. Examining himself afterward, he discovered a piece of shrapnel had sliced his right wrist down to the bone. A medic treated the injury but feared infection, so Mauser was evacuated to a rear aid station. "The man beside me in the operating room had been hit in the stomach and hip," he remembered. "I couldn't even look at him. I felt foolish. I only had a small wound, and half of his body was torn apart." He was discharged from medical care in April and returned to Easy Company, where he reported to the new commander, Captain Ronald Spears. "Go back to your unit," Spears told him bluntly. Mauser was surprised. "I expected him to ask how I was doing, but he didn't. He probably thought I was a gold brick, but I kept quiet." Spears already had a reputation throughout the battalion for shooting prisoners, both during D-Day and afterward. During the fighting around Bastogne, he reportedly lined up 2 young German prisoners and shot them. "Those 2 kids were bragging," Mauser recalled. "There were lots of stories about him shooting prisoners. You didn't want to fool with Spears." By this stage of the war, the German military was collapsing, and Allied advances often outpaced their supply lines. Traveling east along the Autobahn in an amphibious DUKW, Mauser watched thousands of German soldiers walking in the opposite direction. "We cursed them every chance we got." While advancing into Germany, he visited a concentration camp. It had already been emptied, he remembered, noting the extensive barbed wire fencing. Even the children's playground consisted only of gravel. He saw the crematory ovens and the barracks, where bare bunks stood without bedding. When Easy Company arrived in Berchtesgaden, Mauser searched through an SS officer's quarters, looking for pistols or money. Instead, he found only 2 flags. "What am I supposed to do with these?" he thought, but he kept them anyway. He later gave one to Eddie Sabo and offered to sell the other to another paratrooper, who eagerly paid $100 for it. He couldn't agree fast enough. The war ended while the 506th was stationed in Austria, and daily life soon became routine. Mauser had accumulated enough points to qualify for return home, so he was not worried about being sent to the Pacific Theater. He was stunned when he learned of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but welcomed the end of the war. Mauser returned to the United States and arrived in Boston in October 1945. Back in Illinois, he had no girlfriend waiting for him, but he soon met a woman named Irene at a local bowling alley. "One Sunday after church, I asked her if she'd like to go out for dinner and a movie." The two married the following year. Even so, Irene never wanted him to discuss his wartime experiences with Easy Company. "My wife hated war." Respecting her wishes, Mauser avoided attending company reunions. On one occasion, he tried to persuade her to watch the mini-series Band of Brothers, but she fell asleep during the first episode. After Irene's death in 2008, Mauser began reconnecting with his past. He reunited with surviving comrades and returned to Europe twice as a guest on historical tours inspired by Stephen Ambrose, though Ambrose himself had passed away years earlier. Everywhere he traveled, people treated him like a celebrity and thanked him for his wartime service. When asked late in life about his most vivid wartime memory, Mauser immediately thought of the crash of Plane 66. I knew all 18 men aboard, and that has stayed with me ever since. Edward Mauser died at his home in Omaha, Nebraska, on January 21, 2011. After learning that Major Dick Winters had died 11 days earlier, Mauser remarked, "He's leading the way for me one last time."